Sunday, September 22nd, 2013. We had a FOMC announcement this week which pushed the S&P right up here in the cash market up to the higher end of the channel, but I think it's a little bit quirky this week in terms of whether or not this is a top here that's going to turn into a larger down move or not. And the reason I say that is there was an immense amount of divergence on Friday between how the SPX looked and how the NASDAQ composite looked. You can see here the SPX had a pretty ugly day on Friday, taking back a good deal of the Fed move here. We'll look at it on SPY as usual, which is a lot easier there. So because it takes the gaps into account. So you can see here SPY actually took back the Fed move here, so you had 100% retracement. But if you look at the ETFs, for instance, of like NASDAQ 100, you can see that the retracement was actually very shallow. Very little happened there. And in IWM, which tracks the Russell, it's the same thing. It was very shallow. And it looks like these indices want to go one more move a little bit higher. So that's what's interesting in this coming week. I really am kind of shifting to a neutral bias here as far as the broad market, because I'm not really sure if this was a top or it wasn't a top because of the divergence, and also a couple of other factors. One of those factors is, of course, the profile, which is showing us clearly that the high of the move here didn't happen in a regular trading hour session. And that's easy to see here because the regular trading hour sessions are the ones here with the uppercase letters where the value areas are denoted by the yellow area. And the overnight sessions are the lowercase letters in between. So this is the overnight session after the big rally on the Fed of September 18th. And that evening, actually, the market made a higher high. And the high in the futures here is about 1726.75. Why this is important is usually you want to keep in the back of your mind that the high of a move is not made in the overnight. If it is made in the overnight, it's relatively it's an insecure high, and usually the high of a move should happen in the regular trading hour session. So that's why I'm thinking that this may happen the same way. And if that does happen, we should see some excess that's over a prior high. And excess is essentially just what this looks like here, where you have some single prints going up, a couple of single prints here. That's kind of some small excess here, but either way, there should be an excess high that clears the other highs in an RTH session where you have this kind of spiky top in the profile, indicating that the buyers are exhausting themselves, and we don't see that. Okay, so that's another thing that to me is kind of conflicting information. And beyond that, I also wanted to point out that some of the leading stocks are still continuing to be really strong. Some of the marquee names, if you look at like Google, for instance, on Friday had a very bullish day. And looks like it wants to be a little bit higher, right, as opposed to the S&P, which is so bearish. Priceline also had a bullish day, setting another record over $1,000. And there's a number of these, these leading stocks that are acting basically more bullish than bearish. So basically, the outlook here, I think, is a little bit neutral. That being said, my ideas for this coming week are going to focus more on longer-term futures trades than on the broad market. I've been talking for a while about corn, and I think it's finally getting close to that buy point. You can see I've got some orders already sitting here just above it. I'm actually going to probably have to cancel these and move these closer to the trend line. Corn is going to reopen, I believe, at 8 p.m. on Sunday night. So depending on when you're watching this video, I don't know. But you can see clearly here that we had a bottom in corn around the 445 level, and just a little bit lower than that. It's going to be very interesting to see if it's just a little lower than that and we touch the trend line perfectly, and this trend line, of course, is on the monthly, it could be a nice double bottom, which would make the pattern even more powerful. So obviously you can see from the orders here, I'm already looking to get some contracts around the 435 to 430 area. I will be watching this closely on Sunday as corn opens and try and get more precise and see what I can do as far as getting an entry for a longer term trade. These are obviously monthly charts, so I'm looking at something longer term. All right, wheat is also in that category. It kind of trades together, but you can see it's relatively far from the trend line. So this I'm really only interested in much lower. When I buy corn, I would not be buying wheat. I would only be buying wheat if it was lower here at the trend line, although obviously wheat does have some horizontal support in this area here. You can see that. Okay, beyond that, I'm thinking that there's a trade developing in the Swiss franc, which would be 6S, and also in the euro. So I'll show you Swiss franc first. What I've done on the Swiss franc, which is /6S, is I've drawn this channel here on the daily, and you can clearly see, this is on a weekly, I apologize. You can clearly see that we're coming into some resistance just above us. And that could happen this week. So I'll be looking to short the Swiss franc. You can see here, I've just put instead of setting alert, I've put an order out for one contract, and that'll sort of, that'll jar me into action when that hits. Then I'll just go to my computer and I'll short some more on the fly as I'm looking at the price action. But sometimes I like to do that if we're a little bit far away. Instead of setting an alert, I'll put a very small lot out, and I'll have the alert sent to my phone on the fill, and then I'll know right away, and I'll see if I'm interested in taking more. So I'm watching the 6S for a short, and also euro as well has been climbing really hard. Also on the weekly chart, up into a resistant area at around $1.36. If you look at this on the daily, you can clearly see it here. So I think that there will be some resistance here on the euro, which will be tradable. And the reason I think that is because it tends to run inverse to the dollar, obviously, and you can see the DX, which is the dollar index, is coming into some support here of a trend line just below. It's at 80.5 right now, 79.80 or so is that trend line. And look on the weekly here. This is where it's going to come into support. And if it loses this, it's really going to support again here. There's a much longer term, more dominant trend line here, a more primary, I should say, here, all the way from April here. So if we lose this support, we'll lose this. So either way, I think that the euro is going to be a short. If we either here when the dollar supports, or if the dollar breaks further, then what you'll probably see is you'll see the euro spike through this resistant area, and then it'll be a short, because it'll probably suck in some longs who are not realizing that the dollar is going to come into support. All right, so that's my focus for the week. Hope you have a wonderful week. On behalf of myself and the entire ShadowTrader team here in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I wish you good trading and good night.